Hello everyone, Jai Hind and welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IAS in English. My name is Bhavar Singh Sirohi and I am ex-NDA 115 course qualified civil services in 2012 and I welcome you on the platform. Now in this video, we'll be talking about Hantavirus and even its implication for the global health. Now why this news is important? Because there was an outbreak of Hantavirus on a ship, that is MV Hondius. This is a cruise ship in South Georgia, and ultimately there was an outbreak of Hantavirus. There are 7 of the people who had been or who contracted the Hantavirus, and there had been death as well. Now this event the outbreak had been confirmed in Argentina, and ultimately after the outbreak on this ship, on the cruise ship, Spain refused to dock the ship at its port. Spain have cited that there are the sovereign biosecurity reasons and that have triggered the WHO intervention as well. Now, right now, just afterwards, what happened was the CDC, that is Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and WHO, they initiated the emergency maritime health protocols. And also, when it comes to this, the complete issue, so it highlights the vulnerabilities that are there in the case of expedition tourism as well as the remote health infrastructure as well. Now, when it comes to this virus, this is Hantavirus, or also called as Hantavirus. Now, when it comes to its family, so it comes from the Hantaviridae family and it is part of Bunyavirales order as well. Now, when it comes to the profile of this virus, this is single-stranded negative sense RNA virus. Also, when it comes to its nature, so the primary host for this virus are the rodents, which are non-pathogenic. The virus is non-pathogenic to them, and it does not, do any of the damage to these rodents. Also, the structure of this virus is spherical, and it has a diameter roughly to the size of 100 nanometers. And when it comes to the stability, so it remains infectious in the environment for several days in the rodent excreta, and there is no vaccine that is available for the prevention of Hantavirus. The only solution is the medical intervention and the ICU care. That is the only that could be done in the event if anybody contracts with the Hantavirus. Now, over here, the primary vector for this strain, that is the Andes strain that I'm talking about, which is the primary cause for the outbreak of the Hantavirus, is the long-tailed pygmy rice rat. All right. Also, when it comes to the contact or how this Hantavirus it spreads, it is through aerosolization of the rodent saliva, urine, or even the feces. So if a person inhales these, this virus, it is basically present in the saliva, urine, and feces of this rodent or the rat. And if a person inhales the fumes, so that is through which it enters into the human body. All right, the incubation is about 1 to 8 weeks, and ultimately the symptoms of this Hantavirus, it actually mimics that of the flu. That is, there is initially fever as well as myalgia, but later on it rapidly progresses to the acute respiratory distress syndrome, and that requires intubation. That is, putting a pipe into the windpipe that is there, and then there has to be artificial respiration that has to be provided, and that is what I was saying, that it requires the ICU care. That is the only solution to this. Now, there is a rare more also, that is that it can spread through the bite wounds as well as contaminated food ingestion as well. And when it comes to human spread of the virus, so it is extremely rare. But when it comes to the particular virus strain that we are talking about, Andes virus strain, so it is, or it has been recorded with the Andes virus strain in Argentina, that there is human-to-human transfer that is also possible. Now, when it comes to the different strains, so there are different strains of the Hantavirus. Originally, it was in the Europe and Asia, but now it is moving towards Americas as well. That is the new world. In the Americas, what it does is it causes the Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or HPS. And in Asia and Europe, the strains which are there, they causes the renal syndrome, that is Hantavirus fever with renal syndrome. So these two strains are quite different when it comes to the different geography, the different continent. In the Americas, the majorly this virus, it attacks the lungs and it causes fatigue, fever and even the respiratory distress. And also when it comes to the Hantavirus fever with the renal syndrome, that is HFRS, that is that is a causative of the strain that is found in Asia and Europe. It attacks the kidney and it leads to proteinuria or hematuria. And here there is the renal failure basically that happens, and hemorrhage can also happen. Also, when it comes to the difference between the HPS and HFRS, it is that the HPS is severe, or it is severe because in it the mortality rate is 35 to 40%. But when it comes to the HFRS that is there in Europe and Asia, the mortality rate is just 1 to 15% depending upon the strain. So there are different strains which are there. For the HPS, there is Sin Nombre Andes virus which are there. And Andes virus is quite deadly because it spreads from human to human transfer as well. Also, when it comes to the HFRS strain, so there is Hantan, Seoul, Pumala as well as Dobrava, which are the strains that are found in Europe and Asia. Now, what are the root causes and the institutional gaps for the outbreak? The first thing is the ecological encroachment, because we know that the tourism is expanding into the pristine rodent habitats, and this increases the spillover risk. There is also the gaps in the surveillance because there is inadequate real-time viral monitoring in the international waters, or in the international waters you cannot monitor the viral outbreaks every time or on a real-time basis. There is also diagnostic latency because when it comes to HPS symptoms, they mimic that of the common flu, and that leads to fatal delays in the intubation. And there are policy failures as well because there is lack of specific antiviral research and development because of the perceived low market viability, because this virus, it does not affect much of the population. Now, this is a very important spread that we are talking about, because this also leads to a critical warning, because human-to-human transmission of the Andes virus, it makes it a potential public health emergency in the international concern as well. Now, what is the link with the climate and the vector spillover cycle? So what happens is, or what is happening right now is the climatic trigger, because the extreme weather events, like for example, El Nino, that leads to increase in the rainfall in Argentina and Peru, and ultimately that increases the local vegetation and even the food supply. Now, what happens is that there is rodent population that explode because of this, and ultimately they are natural reservoir, and what happens if their population increases? There is habitat which gets overlapped, because we know that there is environmental degradation and the agriculture expansion as well. And this drives the rodents. They come into the human-built environments like farms, campsites, or even ships. And that is where we have the spillover event, that the humans, they inhale this aerosolized virus from the contaminated rodent urine, droppings, or even saliva. This virus, it survives up to 10 days at the room temperature. And this is when we are talking about the human outbreak that leads to the human outbreak, and that is why the climate is also a factor for the outbreak. Now, when it comes to India, what is India's stand and preparedness? So India's stance is basically that the current status is that the Hantavirus is non-endemic to India, but there is serological studies that suggest that could be exposure in some of the states. Also, when it comes to the institutional care, it is the NCDC, or the National Center for Disease Control, that leads in the surveillance, and it is a major institution that we have in our country. And there is also, it is the need or the use of the IHIP, that is Integrated Health Information Platform, for the early warning that we are using. And there is massive informal urban clusters that are there right now. All right, the urbanization is booming in India, and because we have the massive informal urban cluster with poor sanitation, poor rodent control infrastructure. So again, this is a challenge that is there in front of us. Now, India must champion the global South perspective in the international health regulation negotiations, and that is the strategic move that India should take when it comes to India's stance as well as the preparedness. There is also One Health paradigm of the WHO. Now, this One Health paradigm, it actually connects human as well as the animal and the environmental health into a same or integrated format for the surveillance. That should be adopted. All right. At the same time, El Nino and La Nina cycles, they influence the rodent population. So, of course, climate is a risk that has to be taken care of. And also, there is the loss of predators that we are seeing. The owls and the foxes, they are, they are dying, or the number, it is decreasing, and that again leads to more of the population of the rodent population, and thereby there is more proliferation of the virus into the system. Now, there should be a shift from the reactive medical care to the proactive ecological monitoring that should be done when it comes to the One Health paradigm. Now, when it comes to the complete, scenario, so the health of the planet, it is the health of the planet is the health of the people that we must understand. There should be preparedness. It is not a choice, but it is the survival mandate that we have right in front of us, and that will be all in this video. But at the same time, if you are preparing for the civil services for 2027 or 2028, then you can join the public administration optional classes from the batches starting from 15th of May, and you can join in this batch. You can use the code BRS Live for the maximum discount. Even we have the foundation courses which are starting from 7th of May. All right, for 7th of May, we are starting off with the new batches of the Resolution P2I GS Foundation batch. And again, you can enroll into this using the code BRS Live. And that would be all in this video. Thank you very much, guys, for joining me over here. I'll see you in the next video. And till then, just take care of yourself. That will be all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care and Jai Hind. But do not forget to like, share, as well as subscribe to our channel. Thank you and Jai Hind.